This is the word autism in magnetized letters. It has grown exponentially within the last decade. This is the percentage of the world population that has autism spectrum disorder. The birth prevalence in the United States is 1 in 68. There are 3.5 million Americans living with autism. Shows like The Good Doctor and Atypical are the current media representations of autism. This is my son Ellis and I before an interview goofing around. I decided to do this documentary as a love letter chronicling our journey and finding resources for him. I took my cameraman Victor Diaz on the wild ride to places and spaces, meeting with parents and organizations throughout New York. I had to learn how to clothe him, feed him, get over my C-section scar. It wasn't until he was 18 months exactly. He was tested for speech and an autism diagnosis came up. I knew about autism because of my niece Ariana. I didn't know what it was going to be like for him. Here's a peek into my morning routine with my son to show that having a child on the spectrum is never easy.
Be careful. Come on, despiértate. Ow, ow.
This is my son having a meltdown, not a temper tantrum. When he has these, I have to worry he will engage in self-injurious behavior. I started with our story. Now I want to share the stories of other families from various social economic backgrounds throughout the 5 boroughs and Yonkers. They were willing and kind and offered good advice. I am grateful to have done this doc with their participation. How did I find out my son was autistic? Let's see. First, I noticed he kept stacking cans. Every time I gave him a toy, he would look at it like this. And I was like, what's going on? And then he would swim crawl, so he was like belly flopping on the floor. I took my mother's advice. My mother goes, Eurydice, you need to do something about it. So we looked up early intervention. They came to the house. They sent a speech therapist, a physical therapist. They sent a psychiatrist to come check him out, and they evaluated him. And then we started early intervention from there.
So we got Jacob evaluated when he was around 2.5 years old, and up until then, he really wasn't speaking much. He was doing a lot of repetitive play behavior. He was opening and closing doors again and again. He was lining things up. He was making train noises. Some real rigid behaviors. But as our first child, we didn't think anything was really that different. We figured that he would come into his own when he was ready. And it wasn't until we had him involved in some art class where one of the teachers was a speech pathologist or had some speech pathology training, and she recognized a couple things with the way that he was communicating, and then brought it to our attention and just suggested that we have him evaluated. But it was really originally an evaluation for speech. And when you request an evaluation, though, for a 2.5-year-old, they'll send the whole battery of people.
Yeah, my son got that from me. See, it's funny. Uh-oh. Yeah, what the heck?
Well, I have 2 kids. My daughter currently is 10. She's going to be 10, and my son is 7. So she had language delays. She wasn't speaking. She wasn't, reaching her milestones. So we reached out to early intervention for my daughter, and they diagnosed her with PPD, which is pervasive, PDD, is it PDD or PPD? Pervasive development disorder, which is pretty much saying she's on the autism spectrum, but she's not fully autistic. My daughter, she speaks. She's not social. It's more with her. It's more social. She's very shy and language issues, but for the most part, she's okay. But that, when we had our son, it led to concern because we were like, all right, well, My daughter wasn't speaking at age whatever, at age 3. So, when my son wasn't speaking either, we also took him to early intervention. Took him as early as 1.5 for his first early intervention interview. And at the time, they said he was fine. They really didn't see anything too out of the ordinary. They said he's okay. He seems to be, babbling, but saying stuff. He was making eye contact. Everything seemed okay. But then, we brought them in a year later for a second analysis, and it was determined that my son had autism. And that he was very high on the spectrum, meaning he's nonverbal. He doesn't speak. He self-stims. He flaps his hands a lot.
Soy madre de 2. En el primero me di cuenta ya a los 18 meses que el niño no tenía un contacto visual, al igual que no decía ningún tipo de palabra. El desarrollo del niño no iba de acuerdo a los 18 meses, sino iba de acuerdo a un niño de 6 meses. Al tener una cultura latina, nosotros no tenemos tanta información de qué es el autismo o lo que vendría siendo los hitos del desarrollo de un niño. Y por eso entendía que todo iba normal, ya que tenemos varios idiomas en la casa y yo estaba sola aquí en Nueva York con el niño. Como nuestra cultura latina en Nueva York no es muy diferente a como nosotros la tenemos en nuestros países de Latinoamérica, que está la tía, está el tío, o tenemos una persona que siempre nos puede ayudar y facilitar. En mi caso era yo sola. Veíamos que el niño no hacía contacto con ningún otro niño. Ya a los 2 años y medio viajo a República Dominicana, lo pongo en un colegio y me dicen, mira, el niño no se desarrolla igual. Vuelvo a Estados Unidos e inicio intervención temprana. El niño a los 2 años y medio todavía no decía una palabra. Con mi segundo hijo, completamente verbal, muy diferente a lo que fue el desarrollo de mi hijo mayor. Él pertenecía a un estudio que estaba realizando la NYU, la Universidad de Nueva York, para los hermanos de niños con autismo. Cuando llegamos a los 2 años, estas personas de este estudio me dijeron, el desarrollo del niño no va, aunque como madre entendía que él iba perfecto, ya que todo lo que mi hijo mayor no lo pude ver, como las primeras palabras, como la caricia, como un beso, este sí lo tenía. Pero hay cosas en su motricidad fina y en su motricidad gruesa que no van de acuerdo con lo que vendría siendo el niño.
We were going to, he was going to get an MRI done and an EEG, so the nurse, Thomas, can you go in? Can you go to the bed? Yeah. The nurse was like, oh, your son is autistic, and I'm like, I was like dazed. I was like, okay. So I asked several times the neurologist, do you want my son to get the psychological evaluation done? And she's like, no, it's fine because, he, as of right now, you're doing what you're supposed to do with him. So that's how we found out.
Lena,
What are we doing?
we're going home.
Oh, yeah.
Well, officially I found out that he's autistic when he had his evaluation and we got the diagnosis. But before that, we did notice certain things. Like when he was little, he used to always line up his trains. He knew his letters a little bit too soon and could decode words. He had a great memory for places. Like he knew where he was, like a great sense of location, which neither of us certainly have. Then probably when he went to daycare, they actually had sent him for speech, OT, and PT. So he already had services earlier on. So we knew that there was something going on.
I started noticing that Zachary was on the autism spectrum when I saw him lining things up. When I saw him starting to flicker lights on and off, when I started to see him twirling and having a lot of the secondary characteristics of autism. See, I was an audiologist and speech language pathologist way before having Zachary. And I've been working in the field with children with autism for about 9 years by then. So I knew what the signs were because I did early intervention as a speech therapist. I was always helping parents out. So here I am now as mom, not speech therapist, but mom, and I'm seeing him line up everything I give him. The cars, he'd line them up. And every time he'd line them up, I'd go, I'd make it mess up. And then I would see him looking at it from the side of his eyes, which is another sign you would see. He also was toe walking, which is another sign you would see. His eye contact was there, but it was fleeting.
My father took my son Dorian to the second neurologist because I wanted a second opinion, and they told me that he was autistic. He was 3.5 at the time. Yeah. The youngest, we started seeing earlier signs, and we found out when he was 13 months. His dad noticed that he was doing, he was progressing, but it completely stopped at a certain month. So I think around 9 or 10 months, there was no eye contact. There was no milestones that he was reaching where he used to, and I wouldn't say it went downhill from there, but it was just a standstill.
I found out when I placed her into daycare, is because Ariana was being taken care of by his grandmother for the first 2 years of her life. Okay. So we just thought, she's not talking, it's okay, she's gonna go into it. But when we took into daycare by her second birthday, the lady that was in charge was like, I'm starting to see that she's not acting the same way as the other 2-year-olds. She's not saying the words, she's not talking, and she's detaching herself from that age group. And she's just playing with the babies. Do you mind if we have an early intervention? So after I agreed, because I was like, if you find something that I can't see because I'm the mother, go ahead.
Well, what I currently encounter as a parent with an autistic child, and I have it doubly hard because I'm Latina. For example, I have a full-time job and I have 2 part-time jobs. So it's hard to make time to find a babysitter so I can go work these jobs to take care of him. Sometimes I have busing issues. The buses don't want to cooperate with me. Then sometimes it's to find the right school, and then trying to find the right program. And he's been to like 3 or 4 different schools within the last maybe 4 years. So it's been like a roller coaster ride, honestly.
I think it was mostly just awareness and understanding. When they had their meltdowns or they were doing something that was just odd to other people, I come from a family where they're very strict and disciplined. So they think if he's having a meltdown, it was him, whining, and he needs to be disciplined. Also, when we were out in public, you get ridiculed again because you're not showing that child discipline, but they're not realizing it's an actual meltdown.
Okay, so the obstacles that I've faced with Ariana is loudness. That's been a big obstacle. It's because since I am coming from a Hispanic family and we are loud and we love to have loud music and parties, there has been a lot of parties that we have to decline to go, is because it was way too loud. There was an incident where we went to a baby shower of my husband's cousin, and it was way too loud for her. It was so loud that she was crying, she was begging to go home, even though we were trying to have a good time, but she was not having it and everything.
I believe my daughter will have a job one day and pay taxes and have her own apartment. I believe that, It might be tough, but I believe that we're gonna toughen her up so she gets to that point, And with my son who's nonverbal, and I'm really scared of his future, because most likely he will be nonverbal as an adult, and that scares me to death. How is he ever gonna take care of himself? Will he become a ward of the state? That's something I gotta think about, like will he become, be in some group home with a bunch of other men that had the same issues, and what challenges will he face as an adult? And you know, I don't know. I think about every day. I think about the fact that, you know, my son probably won't marry anybody and won't have a girlfriend, and that's sad to me. You know, I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what all our parents, that's all we want as autistic parents, is for one day for someone to love our kids as much as we love them and take care of them. So.
Mi mayor miedo es dejar a mis hijos en un mundo donde no está preparado por lo que son las capacidades diferentes, que uno está tratando de lograr que ellos sean independientes y que la sociedad siga poniendo trabas a que ellos puedan ser funcionales.
I'm not always gonna be there, so I'm sorry. No, because she's 10, so, you know.
The tougher times are coming.
You know, she's gonna be a teenager, you know, she's gonna have more friends. And when you see these social media, like bullying, you know, and she's sensitive and everything. So I just don't want her to feel like she's alone or she's outcast, you know. Like, she did so much better. Like, her interaction with kids, like before, she would isolate herself. That's when she was younger. Now she got friends, she talks to people. You know, she's the one that makes the conversation. So I just want her just to make good friends and, you know, just don't get backstabbed, even though you're gonna meet a snake here and there.
So my biggest fear is not knowing what his future looks like. My biggest fear is how others judge him and perceive him. My biggest fear is him not learning how to take care of himself if I'm not here. Those are my 3 biggest fears.
So the services that I provide in home are special instruction, which is usually typically only goes for an hour when I do special instruction. ABA, which is Applied Behavior Analysis, is a more structured program that can go anywhere from an hour to 2 hours per day. Usually my ABA sessions are 2 hours, and it's a lot of just repetition, a lot of redirection, as opposed to special instruction, which I kind of do the same thing, but it's just a shortened amount of time. So in the home, doing ABA at the beginning can be very difficult because you're entering into their personal space. So it's like, you know, I run the show here. Who are you to tell me, you know, what to do in my home? And also, it's at the beginning when the kids are just being diagnosed. So a lot of the times the parents have kind of let them run the show, or they didn't, really know how to work with their children. So now it's teaching not just the kids, but the parents as well, and how to interact and redirect them so that they can follow a routine schedule. So I find that sometimes it's difficult because they don't always have all of the tools accessible to them to help them with that, whether it be a small table, blocks, puzzles. So those are things that sometimes I have to go out and get, which I don't always mind.
Hola, buenas tardes. Soy la doctora Ercilia García, psicóloga clínica. Me especializo en rehabilitación de diferentes condiciones. Hoy vamos a hablar sobre lo que es el autismo y las diferentes maneras de cómo bregar estrategias del comportamiento para cuidar a estos niños, a estas personas que son afectadas por la condición. La característica número 1, como dijimos, la introducción, es la dificultad para comunicar las ideas, los sentimientos, las emociones. Dificultad en el lenguaje, que se manifiesta en los primeros 2 años. Hay una etapa donde todas las personas hay una edad apropiada para desarrollar ciertas facilidades o ciertas condiciones del ser humano, como el habla. Y entonces, como está grandemente afectada en esta condición, ahí se puede notar si a los 2 años un niño tiene que tener cierto dominio de palabra, ser capaz de comunicar ciertos sentimientos, y cuando la persona está afectada por esta condición es bien marcado la deficiencia en esta área, que el lenguaje, que está grandemente afectado cuando la condición del autismo existe.
The usual services that are offered are speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. In some cases, there's actually counseling services that are offered for the child. Usually for the counseling services, it's play therapy, and just like a way to get them to sort of interact in a small group of 2 peers. There's also parent training for the parents, because a lot of times, it's just an overwhelming experience for the parents. So the school tries to provide them with more feedback and more information.
Autism comes with a lot of comorbid symptoms. You may see a child that has a lot of digestional issues. They may have difficulty in sensory issues. Lights may become lights for loud sounds. You often see them covering their ears. You may also see a lot of them with hearing losses. You might find children with autism that has other type of physical things or physical disabilities or different abilities, I like to call it, that happens at the same time. So there are many things that come along with autism, and it can be hidden.
So here at the Atlas Foundation for Autism, we are a nonprofit organization. We have a school for students 7 to 21 years old. We offer weekend services. We have a health and fitness class every Saturday. And we also have after-school programs, different kinds of classes that are inclusive. And we try to work with families to get them support with either insurance, working with reimbursement, working with SETS hours from the Board of Ed, or even looking at the OPWDD self-direction process.
So the McCartan Foundation has been around for 15 years. And currently we have a school in Chelsea, a school for children with autism, a school on the Upper East Side for children with speech and language delays, and our center, the McCartan Center for Developmental Disabilities. But our new project that we're working on now is launching a center in the Bronx for children with autism, an early intervention center. And at the Early Intervention Center, we'll offer evaluations, we'll offer service coordination, which is when someone helps you through the process of early intervention, which is, it's kind of difficult. It's a difficult landscape to navigate. And I think it's important that families have an advocate for them. So that's what the service coordinators do. We'll also offer a special autism program designed specifically for young children birth to 3 with autism. It'll have ABA, so we have one-to-one enhanced ABA. We also will have group sessions with typically developing peers that are social, because that peer modeling is so important.
So at the Metropolitan Museum, we have a program called Discoveries that meets one Sunday a month. It is for children and adults, plus friends and family, with developmental and learning disabilities and those on the autism spectrum. There are 2 different programs each Sunday, one for kids aged 5 to 17 and friends and family, and then 18 and up and friends and family as well. So that program is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. It's been around for a long time. So some families have been coming since their kids were very small, and now they're coming, the kids continue to come with friends and family as adults.
Our intent at CARD is to be the community resource for families when they receive the diagnosis of autism, and then also when they continue on the journey with autism. So we provide evidence-based treatment for children, teens, and adults on the autism spectrum. We really want to connect with all of the communities that we work with and work within so that the families have somewhere to go to be able to get additional resources. So we do a lot of outreach with the communities. We meet up with a lot of the different pediatricians, a lot of the other related services providers, so that when we have families coming to us, we can direct them where they need to go if the services aren't something that we can provide to them in-house.
One thing that we also do is make sure that everyone at the local level, at all our centers, also knows enough information about the diagnosis itself so they can help the families understand the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder.
We provide physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and counseling services, all in a sensory gym setting. We also offer groups, social skills groups, sensory motor skills groups, and parent consultations.
New York Families for Autistic Children offers a bunch of resources for families. We kind of target different family members. So we have moms groups, we have dads groups, we have grandparents groups, we do siblings groups. But most of all, we key in on the individuals with autism. We try to work with them and teach them about living inside a family. We don't do academics per se, but we do life skills. We try to teach individuals how to live life on life's terms.
Well, we cover pretty much from A to Z. Depends on the family. Each of our families is different. So where one family might need an attorney, another family may need evaluations. And there's another one that may need somebody just to come in and help them organize the paperwork. We're here for that. We also make ourselves, especially me, I'm notorious for saying in my head, I'm gonna regret this, but I still give my direct cell phone number out. So I'll up, and if a mom or dad is stressed out and it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, they know that they can reach me.
We offer swim lessons, quality swim lessons for children on the spectrum from ages 6 months all the way up to late teens.
So based on my experience, I've been doing this already for 10 years. I've seen an increase over the past 10 years. And based on the new data that's just come out from the CDC with the prevalence of autism increasing, I do believe that we'll see an increase in the need for services and hopefully an increase in the actual services that are provided. I think that those two things need to go hand in hand in order for everybody to, move forward.
Like, we need to shift the conversation from autism being something negative to autism being something beautiful. It's an amazing gift that our children were given. And it looks different than anything else, but guess what? You look different than I am. And I'm different than you are. So if we shift our idea or shift our mindset where we think autism is negative, to now autism is now something beautiful, embracing differences in the world, then I think more would come out and more would say, hey, I'm a mom with a child with autism.
I made it.
As a mother who did this documentary about autism resources, met with other parents and organizations, it's true what they say. You will journey anywhere for your child. It took me about a year to do. I have done it. I don't regret anything. Please accept, understand, and educate yourself about people on the autism spectrum.
Yes, we did it. We did it. Big swim. Very good. High five. Good job. Good job. Good job. You did great. You did really, really good.